At ease, soldiers. Today is a special day, as we'll be looking at a very special episode of EA's PWNED, dedicated to the next big thing in the FPS genre. Starts off as you'd expect, with a summary of what's to see. But a minute or so into the video, one of the presenters takes a rather amusing stab at Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3.
They don't do things by halves here at DICE. Whilst it's relatively easy to put out the same war game with a new lick of paint for each new sequel, when approaching making Battlefield 3, they decided to make a whole new game engine.
The first part of this episode covers the technology that lies beneath Frostbite 2's bonnet. First thing covered is the ANT animation system, which gives Battlefield 3 the edge over competitors by having smooth, realistic animations.
Will users really notice the difference between Battlefield 2 and this one?
You should see a lot of physicality in there and a lot of interaction with the environment, and also a lot of random things happening. I mean, because they do in real life, don't they?
Next component covered is pretty much what makes the more recent major Battlefield titles stand out: destruction. More or less everything can be destroyed or damaged, from chipping away a bit of concrete to bringing down the facade, or the entire building if you're having a bad day and think that the building in question is not a worthy piece of architecture. It just doesn't get any sweeter than this. If we're to look at some new bits of gameplay that briefly appeared during this part, we can see an RPG variant being fired at a building, showing a bit of the destruction. Well, a bit is an understatement. It shows that instead of the wall just disappearing in a cloud of dust like it would in Bad Company games, the wall actually crumbles and the larger pieces fall onto the ground. The overhauled physics really do make things look a lot better. Of course, DICE didn't want to tease us with just an RPG. They also tease us with a T-90 and an LAV-25, also firing into buildings, showing the devastating effects these machines can have on the surroundings. A show of force from Battlefield 3 and what it's capable of. A popular joke among the Battlefield community comes to mind looking at all the stuff getting blown up. Call of Duty players will say, "There's a camper behind that wall," whereas Battlefield players getting out of a tank with its barrel still smoking ask, what wall? During the interview of Gustav Tilleby, art director, about the destruction in Battlefield 3, we can see a gun rack on the wall. It's a distinct possibility that these guns will be included in Battlefield 3. We see an AK-74U, an AK variant, a FAMAS, a G36C, what looks like an M14 or M21, an H&K 416, an M16, and an M4. The third component is audio. If Frostbite has an ace up its sleeve, it's definitely the audio, delivering unmatched sound quality, making the game even more immersive. Sure, Frostbite 2 also delivers unmatched quality in terms of graphics, but you just can't ignore the audio. If you'll play this game with your volume turned all the way up, you shouldn't be surprised to see the old lady from next door running to shelter with provisions for a month, convinced that World War III broke out. One interesting thing Stefan explains is that audio events also trigger other events.
The sound system is actually in control of the camera, so when an explosion goes off, there's a camera shake, and that's triggered by the sound engine.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because then we can also trigger the rumble in the pad. So all of these things just improve the player feedback, and that's something Frostbite is really good at.
We can do really, really big landscapes, and we can also do really tight sort of...
While in previous Battlefield games, the maps were large enough, sometimes maybe even too large. Battlefield 3 is taking everything to a new level. Its Frostbite 2 game engine being capable of combining large-scale open environments with tight spaces like interiors into one gigantic map. And shortly we get a taste of those environments. We see the true scale of the fight between the PLR and the USMC as we've seen from a first-person perspective in the Fault Line trailers. We even get a bird's-eye view of a battlefield in flames, looking out of the cockpit of a jet fighter. And if that isn't awe-inspiring enough, the next few seconds showing tanks storming across the desert sand will send anyone chills up their spinal cords. Last but not least, rendering is covered. Frostbite 2 allows for an insane amount of light sources in one environment, making things look so much more realistic. The scenes which we see here are absolutely stunning. A city couldn't have been more beautifully rendered than it is in Battlefield 3. The rocket launch scene is also impressive, showing off the intricate lighting system, being able to light particles like smoke, and of course that smoke will also leave a shadow, details that do count. The second part of PWNED kicks off telling more about the Back to Karkand expansion pack, with DICE developers sharing their thoughts on why the maps that are to be included in the expansion are so popular.
And why do you think people really liked Strike at Karkand? Apparently it's one of the top maps ever.
It has the infantry stuff. It's super intense. I can barely survive 5 seconds on it. But it also has the kind of the mix of vehicles in there as well. Also, I had a very specific kind of design idea for it when I designed it originally. And I think that part kind of came through.
They also show what a major leap in graphics Battlefield took since its last true installment, Battlefield 2. It's just awesome to see how much graphics really evolved in the past 6 years. At the time, BF2's graphics were absolutely revolutionary. And now BF3 won't stop short of delivering as its successor did over 5 years ago. The comparison between Karkand, as rendered by Refractor 2, and one rendered by Frostbite 2, will leave you stunned. Last but not least, one of the developers drops a not-so-subtle hint that the Rush game mode as seen in Bad Company and Bad Company 2 will also make a comeback.
Will there be different game modes in there as well?
You will be able to play Rush on Karkand, yes.
I'm at the target shooting range here in Stockholm to speak to Battlefield 3's lead weapon designer, Alan Kurtz. Lock and load.
The third part of PWNED 7 covers an interview with lead designer Alan Kurtz about the weapons that will be included in BF3. Some of the weapons we can clearly see at the firing range and might see in the game are a Desert Eagle 50 caliber pistol and a Glock pistol. Alan also explains what the physical warfare pack will contain and what those exclusive or early unlocks do.
Right, so we picked 4 items that we felt really kind of represented the physical battlefield. So we've got the Type 88, it's a machine gun, it's belt-fed, big clip, it's got a bipod. So it means I can set it down on a surface and I can just really own that area. And that's really important to us because that's a supported shooting idea is a really cool concept in Battlefield. Then we've got a classic Battlefield gun, the Dow 12. This is a shotgun, it was in BF2. And it's a 12 gauge, 12 rounds, big magazine, really great for clearing a room. And to go with that, we've also got a special kind of ammo for our Dow 12 called the flechette round. And the flechette round, it just tears through things. If you got thin wood or thin metal, even another player, it'll go straight through them. So at close range, you're going up against multiple people or you think you got somebody on the other side of a fence, you want the flechettes. Then the last thing we did is we really looked at said, you know, Battlefield's about team play, and we really wanted an item that was going to take one of our classes and put it into a team play role that it doesn't traditionally afford. Yeah. So what we did is we looked and we said we can put a flash suppressor on one of our sniper rifles, the SKS. Yeah. And the SKS is kind of a mid-range gun. It lets that sniper get in close with his squad, be there with his squad, be a team player, and work with all of the other players on his team. It helps him stay stealthy in that close range, but it is also completely unique to this physical warfare package.
The final part is a retrospective to the Battlefield franchise, showing just how much things have evolved, proving that indeed, DICE doesn't just apply a new lick of paint for a sequel. As a little bonus, a YouTube user created a fan-made trailer using the footage seen in this episode of PWNED, so make sure to check that out as well. And as always, stay tuned to GamerSpawn and Delta Gamer for more updates on Battlefield 3.